So much. Good morning, and thank you everyone for joining in from across the country. We have over 500 participants who have registered for this webinar, and we already have about half of them on the Zoom link right now with us. As the number continues to build, as the participants continue to join, I want to get started so that I'm able to make the most of the next 60 minutes I have with you and with our very special guest. Just take a moment and go back a year and try and recall what you did in last May. Whatever you did, whether it was a holiday because of the school break, the summer break, or you were attending a sales conference. I was on a regular summer trip to visit my parents in Shimla, and all of that seems like a distant reality for now. What we're experiencing is truly unprecedented and disconcerting. And I certainly want to be able to start this webinar by hoping and praying that all of you and your loved ones are healthy and positive in this pandemic. While we are fortunate to have saved ourselves from the pandemic, and I hope all of us have been safe over the last many months and continue to stay so, most of us have not been able to save ourselves from the infodemic which has come along with it. The more I've heard business and political leaders speak about the current situation, it looks more dramatic, more global, and most unusual than anything what a generation before or after me will ever experience. For us, I guess it's first a healthcare crisis at an individual level and at a professional level as we work for several organizations or run our own enterprises. And then it is a very, very acute economic reality, which to me is greater and bigger than the Great Depression and all other economic recessions that followed thereafter, including the 2008 global financial crisis, all of this put together. I would actually call it the great paralysis, since we've seen the entire world, which has come to a standstill, stopped functioning with almost zero economic exchange. But our objective of the Masterclass series is not to further spread any fear or anxiety. It is or to even engage in public mourning. It is really our opportunity to take a very pragmatic look at the impact and, most importantly, the solutions that might show as the silver lining in all this. There are many words that have jumped out of the dictionary, and no conversation today stands complete without the use of the words unprecedented, quarantined, social distancing, herd immunity, lives versus livelihood. The latest one was the ODA loop by a Harvard prof. And another word, which is right on the tip of our tongue all the time, is debating the new normal. In each of the Masterclass episodes, we intend going deeper into studying the new normal, as we call it, across industry sectors. So clearly taking a deeper view into industry sectors, because we do realize that several sections of the economy have been very differently impacted by the COVID, ranging from very high impact to moderate to low impact. We started the Masterclass series covering the conglomerates, and then proceeded with the microfinance and lending and the manufacturing as sectors. Today, we are here to discuss India's crown jewel, the information technology and outsourcing, 180 billion US dollar industry that employs nearly 5 million direct and approximately 10 million indirect employees, contributes to approximately 8% of the country's GDP. So by no stretch of imagination, this is a small industry. In fact, people would argue that maybe the I in India stands for information technology. And to discuss and get deeper into the information technology and outsourcing, we have Saurabh Govil, a well-known business leader for 3 decades, currently serving as the president and global HR head at Wipro Limited. I've had the privilege of knowing Saurabh for many years, and I've always admired him for his realistic and determined view of things. Saurabh, welcome, and thank you for taking out the time.
Thanks, Sandeep. Thanks for having me over. appreciate.
I know you don't do such sessions very often, so really appreciate that you're doing it for us and for hundreds of our viewers who've joined in from India and across Asia.
I appreciate. I look forward to the session, engaging session. And whilst you call it a master's series, I must tell you that I myself a student, so it's not a master. I will share what we have been doing and try to pick up things which we can do more.
Yeah, no, I think we are all just sitting in the hierarchy of being students, and clearly, I guess you're on the top of that list.
So absolutely look forward to that session. Yeah.
And we'll dive straight in because I want to be able to make the most of the time that we have with you, Saurabh. And just for the audience, as Kamakshi did lay out, we will keep picking up the questions during the course of this conversation with Saurabh. So Saurabh, lockdown in India was put on March 25th. Today we have completed exactly 2 months of the lockdown. How are you feeling? What's the morale around you?
Good question. I'll tell you, Sandeep, when we started 2 months back, in fact, at Wipro, we had been a bit foresighted, and 16th of March is when we called it out to our teams that we will not work from office. But very clearly, we were much more optimistic that time when 26th March, when the Prime Minister said that let's 2 weeks, and we thought 3 weeks will be done with it. But now I think terms with it is that this is there to stay, and it's going to change the way we work and live. Uh, right now, as I speak, there is a bit of anxiousness because things are opening up in the country, but so are the number of cases going up. So there is a bit of uncertainty amongst a lot of employees and people, uh, but we'll have to live with it, is all I can say.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. Purely in terms of economic terms, the impact of COVID-19 is worse than anything before. And simply because this is something which has dented both the demand as well as the supply side. Share with us what is that you've been hearing from your customers and clients, and we do understand that they are all over the world.
So, to explain something, I'll give both the first customer and clients. Given the way the industry serves, this industry serves a huge portfolio of clients. It's across different sectors, different verticals, and we realize that the impact of this is overarching and across, and never seen the impact of COVID financially and economics. But in different industries, we are seeing a very different behavior coming up. So one is, as information technology, we realize that we do critical work for our customers. Either do it work which is just to keep their business going. So for a person sitting in a retail shop, can we have the invoice generated to that extent so the business can continue, to doing some large transformational work. So we are in the heart of the business, and it was very critical for our clients to make sure that during this process, we are able to maintain what we are doing. So if I look at some sectors like transportation, hospitality, retail, they are very, very impacted. Very, very impacted. So because airlines, it's the revenues have become zero, so it's nothing new which people will be hearing, but that's very impacted. You come to some others where they saw a blip. There were a lot of manufacturing facilities which were shut down, so manufacturers. But given the push on making sure that the supply chains don't get impacted, especially North America for them, which is the biggest market for this industry, uh, very clearly we saw those coming back quickly. So a lot of the manufacturers coming back. Then we have a third set of groups, which are the more technology companies, and the healthcare and the pharma companies, where they are seeing a huge surge in some of their products and things which they are doing. So, pharma, a lot of the work they're doing both to manage the COVID as well as the future. So there's a lot of surge of work there. Second, in the tech companies, the entire thing of driving for digitization, going on the cloud, making sure virtual things which they have been using usage of collaboration tools, like the one we are using today just now. These which are being pushed by these companies certainly have gone up, in so there was a surge, so there's a huge requirement. So if you look at it, there are very three different kinds of sets of customers. One was severely impacted, don't know what's going to be the future, shutdowns, closures, kind of stuff, bankruptcy. Second is went through a blip, hope things to come back on track. And third is seeing a surge. So it's an evenly spread kind of a thing which is there.
Yeah, and the first reaction that obviously corporates had was, how do we ensure the safety of our and the well-being of our employees and get into a place where we can continue to serve our customers. Now, we know that knowledge workers and IT and outsourcing might be a lot better geared up to doing that remotely than maybe the manufacturing sector. But there were a huge amount of data privacy norms that would have come in the way as you were putting people into working from home, especially in your BPO segment.
So, very important, and I must share this with you. When we went through it in the beginning, and then it's like a story for us. Our first thing was, and this was the way we had lived and worked for so many years, that this work can't happen from home, you know, and this needs to happen at a workplace. But given this was all pervasive, this entire pandemic, a lot of our clients very quick to give us approvals to work from home. So that was the first stage, because for us to move anything, we need approval from our clients to work from home. So that was the first stage of getting that. But it was conditional. It was for a period of time. It was, given that what they were going through with their employees. The second thing which came up was, how secure our, data and, cyber security threats today to our, because for our clients, uh, working in a very secure Wipro network, and sometimes client networks coming directly into our facilities, to working from, you know, uh, home and home network broadbands, and how will we be able to do that? Again, I think technology played a key role here, and remotely we were able to push a number of agents into our network, which would create one layer of or two layers of security, not to the level which would be there in our premises, but fairly secure to manage the work. So that's the second thing we have. Third is the physical infrastructure. As this industry, as you gave the statistics, employs a large number of people, and a lot of that when the industry started was about cost arbitrage and productivity and cost structures. So we have had a large number of people working in our premises in different shifts. They will share a particular tool, so there will be one desktop for three of them, and now you have to get them to work. And third, which was unique for us, is that large part of the workforce is a migrant workforce, even in this blue collar job. So people would come from small towns and work, and they would live in shared accommodation, and they would live in places. And how do we make sure they are able to do work? Like you and I are sitting in our houses and sitting in a room. They don't even have a room to themselves. So
Right.
these are the practical challenges which we went through as we moved, and more so as you read that people in a BPO environment, because there the population is small, the younger, the population is younger, and for a lot of migrant people. So we had our own share of challenges, but our intent and attempt had been continuously to make sure that, as you said, employee safety, customer data security, and data safety, and then taking it forward.
Yeah, I think we certainly have a lot of gratitude and acknowledgement for our healthcare workers who are clearly on the front line, but in the corporate sector, HR and our internal IT was at the front line, just enabling millions and millions of workers to work from home. So a big thank you and a call out for them. Just changing the topic a little and getting understanding the present and maybe the future a little bit more. Saurabh, we were already in technology industry grappling with the growing nationalism, protectionism, and I'm wondering if COVID is the last nail in the globalization coffin. The no visa zone, which is the Schengen area in Europe covering approximately 26 countries, that promoted free and unrestricted movement of people, for the first time, close their borders. We've got the Trump administration, which has been talking about, uh, further suspension of H-1B visas. How does this all play out in the context of technology in BPO when we nearly have about 75% of our revenues coming in from exports?
So good point, and there's a good and there's a not so good part of it. So if you look at it, if I take a step back, this industry came up with the premise was that India has a huge talent base, and second, that it had a mobile talent base, people who are willing to go across the globe, and we went and we did that over the last 2.5 decades. Uh, Given, as you rightly said, we were seeing, a lot of nationalism coming. We talk about what happened in the US with what happened in Brexit, but this is going to completely accelerate this event. Uh, every country today is seeing a lot of unemployment. You've seen the unemployment levels in the US, and so is the case across. And every government today is trying to ensure that when any employment opportunities, the first port of call has to be for their own residents, own citizens. Now, if that is the case, we will see that the boundaries of each of these countries are only going to go up, and mobility of people will become even further restricted. So today, 2 decades back, the dream of a youngster to join the sector was, especially on the IT side, that was, I will get an opportunity to see the world and be globally somewhere. And and large part of today's Indian diaspora is made of such people. But that reality has completely changed. I think movement of people will be far and few, will be for very, very critical niche skills, which are unique, will be for a limited period of time, and will not be in scale. So that's one part of it. However, the good part of it was is that, is that this also pandemic has pushed boundaries for us where people have been able to do work which was today being done or till yesterday being done next to the customer client can be done from anywhere. So the question begs is that do we really need people to be next to the client tomorrow in those countries, or why can't we do it remotely? And that completely shifts both the cost structure, the way we serve our clients, and drive more of offshoring in this. Today, the industry works on a 80-20 kind of a rule where 80% work for these happens from offshore locations and 20% to the client. I think this will drive extreme offshoring because it is borderless, anywhere, anytime kind of thing. So there's a good side of the business where you can do more of work which was not done henceforth. And then the bad side is that, yeah, mobility of people will be better restricted. And there is huge uncertainty, Sandeep, right now for employees, their families, what is the future, people who are there, how long can they there, it impacts their children, their, studies, education, everything. So because suddenly, there are no renewals happening and stuff. So it is going to be a challenge.
Yeah. I was in conversation with a client of ours, a CEO of a large media house. And he very beautifully put that I find myself grappling with a challenge where my values, my corporate values, are in conflict with the validity or the viability of the business. Uh, and I think something that you essentially just spoke about is alluding to that fact. Would you have you had those discussions in your boardrooms? Because this clearly is going to change the employer value proposition of the information technology industry that it's had so far.
Very much, Sandeep. And I must tell you, it's from a Wipro group perspective, it's even bigger because as a Wipro group, we have been doing a lot in terms of, managing this humanitarian crisis. As you know, between the Wipro group of companies and the foundation, Azim Premji Foundation, we have donated 1,250 crores, earmarked for work in India during this time. And we have been doing work, I don't want to get into that, but In fact, to the extent of one of our facilities in Pune, which was vacant, is being converted as we speak into a COVID hospital with at our expense for the government of Maharashtra, given what we are going through, and number of work, feeding 20 million migrant laborers to people. So people see that Wipro does a lot of that stuff, and then the question begs to come is that, why are you doing what you have to do? Because we had to also, we haven't laid off anybody. We are fortunate as a company, we are an industry, and industry across we haven't. But the challenge is, yeah, there are things which used to happen for people will not happen the way it used to happen in the past. And people are saying why, because we called out, for example, when this broke up, we said our annual merit increases which were planned, which happens every year in June, will not happen, or a promotion cycle will defer it. Things like that. And in a context today, this is nothing. This is, not adding any costs, and not about reducing. And there is a huge backlash in terms of employees saying, on one side you are doing this, which is huge humanitarian effort, and on the side you are, cutting down for us, and are you doing this at the cost of employees? So it begs you to think, that the point you made, vitality, and the values, and how do I look? But I think it's important for us as leaders to, first of all, make a difference, that I will do what is good for the society, but I can only do that good till I have a good economics to back it. It's like the big debate that is happening is that, is healthcare more important or economics more important? Good healthcare cannot happen if there's no good economics. So good worker society cannot happen if Wipro was not making money, and foundation wouldn't have been happening because of that. So very clearly we have to drive these two differently. But the other big learning has been for us is being extremely transparent and honest in saying what we have to do. I think people are smart enough, especially in the knowledge workers, to understand that this is a reality. There, and anything which we want to say and do, on the garb of something else, is not acceptable to them. They
Yeah.
would rather hear it the way it is, see it the way it is, and respect you more for that. And that's what has kept us in good stead. That we have been brutally honest with people, very transparent, with empathy, trying to drive the message.
Yeah. And I guess, as much as clarity as we can provide to the larger employee segment and even the prospective employee segment. I want to talk about the work from home, and we've had several tech companies globally, like Twitter, that would, and they've said that we would prefer our employees working from home forever. Uh, we've had organizations closer home like TCS that have announced that nearly 75% of employees might never come back to office. And on the other hand, and I find Satya Nadela's interview and his comment to be very, very pragmatic. He's spoken about that making remote work permanent could have serious consequences. So, are we here replacing one dogma with another? What's your take, Saurabh?
Good point, Sandeep. So, few things which at least I will say from our industry's perspective, and then I will say from Wipro perspective. So from an industry, we will be governed by three or four things and how work from home happen in the future. First of all is, today we as an industry have got client approvals to work from home for a period of time given this pandemic. Will these continue forever is something we'll have to wait and watch. What is the reaction of the clients? How do they want to see it, kind of stuff, and what's been their experience. So that's one which is client approvals become the first part. The second, which is important, is, as I spoke about it, which is a huge, huge challenge today, is cybersecurity. This platform we are on right now, Zoom. What's happening around it because of security reasons. So that's a huge concern for a lot of our clients, which is there. Third, even from the government of India and for a BPO, and a lot of approvals have come to us to work from home till 31st of July. There are some tax breaks coming. Will these be long-term and permanent in nature? Uh, these very clearly three drivers will drive how work from home will happen in the future for the industry. But having said that, uh, this learning of the last 60 days or 8 weeks has been that things which we had not done in the past or not done in the past are happening today. So very clearly, the number of people required or what used to be at office earlier will not be the case tomorrow. We will definitely have much less number of people at our offices going forward. And we will have larger people working for longer periods of time for work from home. But in my view, it'll never be either and or. It can never be that you permanently work from home. I personally believe cultures and organizations happen when people come together, that water cooler talk, that laugh over a cup of coffee. I think those are important events to happen, and if these do happen, make a huge difference. So that is very critical for the organization. So we will definitely see people. I think it's important for people to come, but this also gives us the leverage of the issues on a city and the commute and the 3 hours people are spending, or in driving inclusion. So the big challenge in this industry, and how do we do, especially at senior levels, driving inclusion, diversity, that we can see more of this happening. So it will be a hybrid in my view as we move forward. What percentages, some policy and some will tell us, but very clearly new normal. These huge campuses all of us have, all this is being questioned. Do we need these fancy stuff? Can we do without them? The new real estate which we had planned completely has been put on stop. So all those absolutely will be a different.
Yeah, and at least my view is that permanent working from home is not just a serious hazard for your social and mental health, but I also do believe for innovation, which is on what the technology industry thrives.
No, no, absolutely. On the this thing on the point you had on mental health, I think it's an important subject, and working from home and the loneliness is a big driver right now being challenged, that how can people sustain this over a period of time. Today also people view that when am I coming, when I'm going to get the call, when I have to come back to work, kind of stuff. So it is different. Very clearly it is different.
Yeah, yeah. So, really talking about the new normal, what are the three big bets that you would take, how the world would look like from here? Like, what's your definition? How would you paint that canvas, or what the new normal will look like? And to just make it very precise, what could be those three items which you actually believe could be very defining for the future and the world that we will see for a long time?
So, it is evolving. So I may not have a definitive view, but it is evolving because there was a time when, after the global financial crisis in 2008, 2009, we saw the surge of the gig economy started, that people self-incorporated, that became the biggest, that I'll be on my own, flexible kind of stuff. That bunch of people is the most severely impacted today. The startup community in this country, if I take, where people had limited cash flows and kind of stuff, are getting impacted. So entrepreneurship is becoming a challenge. And today, the most stable ones are seen are the large organizations which have cash flows, which could, manage, with deeper pockets to manage this entire thing. So how will that shift? We do not know. But what is coming out from this, Sandeep, is one very is I think specialization will become a big driver.
Right.
People, from future job market kind of stuff realize that it is those specialists which will create kind of thing, will be the new normal, as we say, is far more emphasis on this part. Second, which in my view, which will happen is the acceleration of the entire digital world, and I'll give you an example. This is for somebody whom I knew, who's 58-year-old. had to travel yesterday when the domestic flights opened. Not so, lady who's not so well, technology, was able to do everything touchless, from, web checking to, the entire thing which was being planned across. I'm saying it is completely changing the way this will happen. So the technology will become a big, big driver. So specialization in technology in every sphere, every sphere will do that will play a much bigger role, and we'll have to understand this. I think third, from a people standpoint, which I believe is we need more resilient leadership. The resilience from a leadership standpoint, Sandeep, is something which is so expecting short-term, quick returns. As I say, this is again an era where T20 will move to a test match in cricket parlance. Expecting things to happen in a quick thing, enjoy kind of stuff. Here you need to be more patient, more resilient, driving a lot of stuff and seeing and being comfortable with the ups and downs, like the true cricket innings happen, take every session by session. I think that's what we'll see the change. So one is I wanted to say about people have to get specialized, and more specialization and drive that, which is about learning. Second is technology being much, much more pervasive, and that includes the digital tsunami, the transformation. And third is about self being much more resilient as leadership.
Yeah. Does this sort of also change the kind of people that we've traditionally looked at being employed in the technology and the outsourcing sector? Because, if work from home is really a reality, um, uh, which we are already experiencing, and it will become a significant part of how we will all live and work, and that will define the work and the worker and the workplace and so on and so forth. It opens up diversity because now you can go and employ women, which you otherwise could not have because they had to balance the priorities at home and work. Uh, and there is also an increasing debate in the industry that is leading to the fact that a large part of the workforce will open up in the format of gig. So now you might not only look at one permanent way of employing people, because organizations are clearly looking at variabilizing their cost. At the same time, it is playing a lot to the choices that the millennials are likely to make, that why can't I have more than one employment at the same time?
Very true, Sandeep. So I must share with you that I think inclusion and diversity, it can be a huge step. Not only for gender, which you spoke about, I think for people with disability, the access issues of people, people, who are housewives, work which was happening, in different paths, because this industry does, on one side, when I speak of specialization for high-end jobs, there is also a lot of work happening down the value chain, and you'll see a lot of those. So we can really see employment on those parts of this coming. But the second trend, which is very clearly, is cash will become king. Companies will want to conserve cash. Cash will become king. And hence, variability of cost structures will be the other big thing. Have less and less of fixed costs, and variability, which will drive a phenomena right now uh, of gig economy. So I'm contradicting myself what I said earlier, that, as I said, things will emerge. Today, the most comforting are people who are part of large organizations, because they feel that the future, at least in the near term, is secure. But these are the same large organizations would want gig workers coming from tomorrow. I must share with you, Wipro has, some time back acquired a platform called Top Coder, which is a platform which does all coding work virtually. If any client has a problem, you can give that problem and that will be done virtually. You put it on that platform, people will come, do the work and put it back. We have 1.1 million subscribers to it. This can explode, which would really mean this industry does not need these armies of people permanently deployed. So So number of new things will open up. Number of new things will open up for people, right now, that especially on this front, that inclusion will be a big thing. I think it's our biggest opportunity to drive the higher ratios in senior levels, especially in middle levels and senior levels in this industry from a gender standpoint. Very
Yeah.
much for India, and for the reasons which women couldn't come into the workforce, very clearly tomorrow they can be in the same workforce.
No,
So
in the top coder as a platform, it is truly amazing. And uh, we've actually taken the same and kind of improvised it for our own internal context at People Strong. And I must tell you that it's actually playing wonders for how we are able to advance a lot of our own product development at People Strong.
it's happening. This industry works on a premise of having a bench of people which were ready people to be deployed on new projects coming. And the entire learning for them and the training for them to upskill them and reskill is completely virtually on this platform today.
You know, if you see my eyes running on the screen, that is because I want to make sure that I'm also able to pick the
Okay.
questions from the audience. I've been able to pick several of them so far, but there is one question that's constantly repeating on that window, which is clearly, I guess, where the mind of the people uh, really is, which is what's the employment outlook uh, for for the next 1 year? Uh, what should the millions of engineers in Indian engineering colleges look at their future coming out of this COVID, and we don't really know how long does it last, when is that organizations will start hiring for growth, because while the top coders and many other programs are great programs, they are also reducing the reliance on just going to campuses and hiring like how we did in the past.
So very good question, Sandeep. And in my view, it will be the employment option will be muted. That's my personal view, because every organization today is in a wait and watch mode. First phase you are seeing the reaction. You will see now as things time settle and people come back to a new normal. You will see we are hearing news about layoffs, cuts, kind of stuff happening in different parts of the world, because it's just not, they don't have cash to pay. So, and especially for the large sectors, small sectors in the country. So it will be a muted outlook from an employment standpoint. Even large organizations today, like ours, you know, we have scaled down our hiring. It's not that we are zero, we have scaled down our hiring. And what we are hiring today are really, really the niche skills. And that's why I said in the near term, specialization will become key, where you are able to be picked up because you have something which is unique. So that will be the driver. Uh, from a Wipro context, I can only assure the audience that Wipro will continue to will honor whatever commitment it has made in the past. Because we have gone, large numbers of offers have been rolled out in our technical campuses and engineering MBA campuses, and we will continue to hire. But the industry outlook, the country's outlook, will be muted in the coming year for sure.
Yeah. I recall, Saurabh, when we had met almost about year and a half back, you and I had spent time talking about the reskilling of the middle project management layer in the information technology industry, especially the IT services, because of digital transformation and almost the original business model being challenged in many ways. And now with remote working, the role of the project and the people manager becoming significantly lessened. Is it right to say that this is, or rather, manager is one of the major casualties of COVID, and this is like the demise of a generic manager that we just needed to manage a large span of control and just be accountable for delegation and things like that?
You know, it will be premature to do the obituary for a manager. I would put it that way. I think it will be required a different avatar. Uh, and the reason I say it is that what we have seen is that even in the last 8, 10 weeks, when people are working from home, managers have got differentiated by how they've approached this time. People who have reached out more, people who are able to give a more patient hearing, are people who are being sought after. Some of them have, chosen this time that out of sight, out of mind kind of stuff. So, there are two extremes which how people have operated upon. But I think the expectations from a manager would change. But somebody who was only being a people manager will, over a period of time, will lose relevance. We would need people who are able to meet and drive some skill set that is unique to them. Along with that, they're driving a team is very different than doing only people management. And in this industry, you're right, Sandeep. You and I have discussed it at length. There was a large number of people who have grown doing only people management, especially on a BPO side, managing operations, uh, kind of, which will, where technology will take place for a lot of stuff which they were doing, and they will have to reinvent themselves for sure.
Yeah.
So I would say it's not about the demise, it's the end, but expectations will be very different from person tomorrow.
Yeah, no, we are actually already seeing that with many of our clients when we're talking to them about productivity, they're actually more interested in investing in technology. And that's really seen a massive upsurge in our own homegrown tool called Zippy of People Strong, which helps you manage collaboration, your task, your goals, your performance. In in many ways, it is making the role of a manager significantly efficient. But at the same time, I guess it's hugely reducing the number of managers that one might just need, like how we have had a reliance on them in the past.
Absolutely. In
Since
fact, People Strong is a good example of, you serve, payrolls for so many companies and, kind of stuff, and everything was happening seamlessly, hiring for so many, without any hitch, during this time. So, completely. So it's a very different setup required now, very different when people are not there and things are happening. Technology is going to play a role.
no, we were nervous to process about 650,000 paychecks on the 1st of April when all of our employees were sitting at home. But I guess the team did a fabulous job. And I think we learned a lesson from this crisis for ourselves as well.
Absolutely. All of us.
Yeah. As we were talking of productivity, literally every person has been talking about that how during this lockdown, they've experienced higher levels of productivity. Now, I come from a very conventional school where productivity was output over input. And clearly, the output that we're seeing across industries, across people, across teams is a lot lesser. Uh, so like I do believe that we've got a lot more discipline. We're using our time a lot more effectively. There's less of chit chat. Everybody turns up in meetings on time, and that might just be a very shallow definition of looking at this to be a productivity boom.
I would agree, and this is a classic thing of effort versus outcome. And sometimes we believe that putting in additional hours means higher productivity. So, two things. One is very clearly there's a group of people who are feeling that the lines have blurred between home and office, and it's become 24/7. It's extended work is more intense. But and I have been asked this question several times within the organization itself: is how are you looking at productivity of people? For me, there is a lot of employees, a large base of employees who are customer facing, who get billed when they serve the customer. And our biggest proof of coding is if I'm getting the invoicing for those employees, I they are that the outcomes are happening and they are productive. That's the way I'm looking at it. There is another group of people, there's a smaller percentage, but sizable still in our scale, which are the support group of people who are not client facing, but are doing work. Here, it is difficult to come to a conclusion because I'm seeing a huge variability. There are some people who are, who take ownership and are really stretched, and some who are making can manage this you know, remote working and, are maybe less productive. So it's a mixed bag for such people. Uh, the answer, in my view, is that what we will see is when organizations become trimmer going forward, and they look at uh, costs, takeouts, these are the people who will get impacted, who are not client-facing people, who are people for whom the outcomes are not so defined clearly. Those are people who they will see the impact, which will be there. And again, that brings down the point that if you are specialized, if you are critical, if you are client-facing, you have nothing to worry.
Yeah,
If you
there is a question from one of the audience who I think is worried about something which might not be very necessary at this point in time, but eventually it will be. How will the performance management system look at the end of this year when we would have put in a lot of effort, but with very limited output? I guess we would have generated some great ideas and been very, very innovative to deal with this massive unknown situation that we are all grappling with. But again, if we just base this on the premise of output, we might all just be appearing below the line.
So, Sandeep, I was speaking to one of my colleagues, a business leader in the company, and he was, April. So because that's when we start our fiscal and all this struck in April. So you're saying I'm working on my, the team's goals and objectives and, setting the targets. And he said, my focus this year is going to be very different from my traditional ways. Traditionally, I would look at what's going to be my top line, what's going to be my profit, what will be my, order booking for the next year's kind of stuff. This would be the financials would drive a lot of it. I know today, the plan which I have taken pre-COVID, because the planning cycle happened in February, it has no meaning today, very clearly. And if I have to drive those financials alone, then I'm going to. So he took in terms of the right team, the right sizing of the team, making sure we have the right structure. Basically saying, can I drive things which will prepare me for a better 2021?
Right.
And so he has very clearly shifted the goalpost, as to say, in terms of not looking at the way we used to look at things traditionally to what is required today and then measure ourselves against that. So that's the shift which people are seeing. So I would encourage people to really look at what is important for people to drive this today.
Yeah.
I could look at my head of facilities. Earlier it was about upkeep, of the entire and how we are scaling up to now it's making sure that how safe we are and what are we doing to manage. Let me just redefine and rewire the requirement for this current year and then measure yourself against it. That will be the most optimal way to look at things.
Also, Saurabh, I sometimes wonder, going back to my consulting days, that is this a great opportunity for us to undo many things that we just did because either we were mindful of
Sandeep,
I think we lost Sandeep for a bit.
yeah.
Uh,
set the
so
new normal for pay.
Sandeep, we lost you for a bit. Can you just repeat? There was a bit of a static. So,
Okay, I'm sorry. Am I audible now?
yeah, you're audible now. Yeah, please go
Okay.
ahead.
So I said, this might also be a great opportunity for us to undo certain things that we were forced to do because of market forces. And one of that was the ratcheting effect of compensation, clearly at the executive and at the senior management level. Do you see that this might be a good opportunity for us to create the new normal of pay in the technology, in the outsourcing industry, which honestly only adds to our competitiveness as we attract more work into India?
So, Sandeep, I from the firm view that compensation and pay is largely driven by market forces. It actually boils down to demand and supply kind of scenario, and we could see things happening in the IT sector when it was booming, and the pay in you and I have discussed how crazy it was at times. People get to the same environment, the same country. There's a manufacturing sector which was much more stabilized and much more so in the current environment, absolutely you will see how the demand and supply would differ, and things will be muted for sure. It is, and people expectation right now is about am I employed to saying am I getting a good increase? That's the paradigm. So the paradigm is completely shifted. Uh, However, as I say this, I again go back that people who are unique, who are with the critical skills, will always demand a premium, because for them the debate will be there about demand and supply. They will be high in demand, and when they're high in demand, they'll ask for a premium. So overall, the industry, I agree, will see from a cost structure but these are increasing costs today. If you look at it, the IT industry is 55-60% of the P&L is employee cost. Now, you may not add to it, and you might, but very clearly, people will not be comfortable if you have to reduce this cost structure. And reduction of cost structure, the belief within the industry is by having lesser people rather than looking at a lower pay. That's the way to look at it. So if I have 1,000 people today, can I do with the same work with 600 rather than doing it without? So that's the one view which is there. But overall, if you answer your question on pay, yes, we will see a new normal, at least as business and market forces demand. The business will be muted, and we will see that impact coming on people. But the key skills, high performers need to be ring fenced and taken care of, because we shouldn't take them for granted. Very clear.
Yeah, and I do believe that these are the times when, even for us to stretch ourselves to keep the high performing and the critical skill sets engaged in organizations, is not just going to be done on the factor of compensation. It can be done on multitudes of other relational factors, I would actually say. But one element on compensation, which organizations, and I've just been picking that up in the marketplace, is we are just doing a cut for the next 6 months, which is somewhere, in my opinion, I think rightly or wrongly, setting an expectation that the moment the economic situation improves, we are going to come back to the previous compensation levels, which honestly I don't see happen. And I also believe in many cases, at least at the senior top management, should not happen. But
I completely agree with you. But right now, I think everybody is not being bold enough to say that. So right now, it's a very here and now approach to the problem. Now, let's see how it goes. Right now, I'm not doing next 6 months, things will look up and we'll wait. So that's how people are looking at it, not in terms of driving it in any other way. But I completely agree with you that we have to look at a longer term view. At a more philosophical level, I think people also realize that given the last 8-10 weeks, that you don't need much to live well. It's minimalization, and people are comfortable. So why cry for all this and run for all this crazy stuff that we have been doing?
one good advice that you would have for HR tech organizations like ourselves. Obviously, I think we are kind of making our own prediction about the future and making massive investments into how we will be at the forefront to help organizations build a very, very collaborative infrastructure from a technology standpoint that will add a lot more in the same number of hours of work that they will essentially be able to do. And that will be a big driver, not just of process and automation and efficiency, but actually about organizational strategy and culture. But having your view as we are building that next version for ourselves will be very useful.
Sandeep, I couldn't agree more than what you have said. The future of organizations, HR tech companies, will be how technology will drive the change. Right? Technology of tomorrow would be the ones which will drive the organization culture, the pace, how you structure it, and how you serve your clients. And that will become the key differentiator. And People Strong is a living example in this, how, irrespective of the pandemic, how technology has driven a lot of changes. I think that is the path all of us, all technology organizations need to look at it, because ultimately that will be the key differentiator for people, how we are able to deliver to those promise on a superior technology platform.
Yeah. No, thank you, Saurabh. I realize that we are at almost at the top of the hour. And
Oh,
before we close, I
nice.
just want to take you through a very quick, rapid fire. So please limit your response to a word or maybe at best a few words. I'll start with the first. You and I have heard the Churchill's quote, don't waste a crisis, I think a million times over the last many weeks. In fact, I Googled and I said, who really said this wise few words? And I figured out that it was Winston Churchill. What's the best thing that has happened to you in this lockdown?
I started working from home. I never worked.
Uh, the biggest challenge you are ready to face when you ask your employees to return to office?
uh, Given the comfort of a very healthy and a safe environment.
Oh, wonderful. Looking at the new world, what career advice would you have to a 20-year-old who's waiting to start his or her life uh, as we talk?
It's a marathon, not a sprint. Be patient, uh, keep learning, and you'll do well.
And really the last. So, if nothing else, this lockdown has slowed all of us down and given an opportunity to recalibrate, reflect many parts of our lives. So my question to you, Saurabh, is in the post-COVID world, help me arrange these three choices you would make for yourself in a descending order, starting with the most important. The three choices are work, health, and relationships.
I think health, relationships, and work.
Terrific. I would actually make absolutely the same choice, but many people would make different choices, and we would absolutely respect that. But thank you so much, Saurabh. Honestly, I think we've got a lot done. This really brings us to the end of this masterclass. I can't imagine that we got through as many questions as we did. Uh, I guess we ranged very far and very wide. Thank you for the wonderful audience. I do apologize that I could not take many questions, but I did the best that we could, which I thought were falling into the flow of conversation with Saurabh. But most importantly, Saurabh, I think your time has been very, very valuable. And at a personal level, it has been very enriching. And I do hope that for many of our participants who've logged into the Zoom call on YouTube, on Facebook Live, it has been a wonderful 1 hour that they've spent with us. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you for having me over. Wonderful, wonderful time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Namaste, and hope to see you very soon on the other side.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.